everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Salma Avdic, and I'm with the American Marketing Association. I want to welcome you all to our webcast. This is in partnership with ReadyTalk, entitled Converting More Customers, How to Effectively Scale Digital Marketing for Multi-Location Brands. So before we get started, I just wanted to go over some important housekeeping items. This webcast is being recorded and will be made available to you soon, so please look out for that. We also encourage everyone to continue the conversation on Twitter, and you can do so by referencing hashtag everythingislocal. And if you have any technical or content-related questions today, please feel free to ask them at any time by using the chat box, which is located on the left-hand side of your screen. And so with that, I'm very happy to introduce our two presenters today. So we have Joshua Allen with us, and he is the Director of Marketing at Location3. And so in his current role, he is responsible for planning, developing, budgeting, and managing all Location3 brand strategies, digital marketing campaigns, as well as communication initiatives. You can also check him out on Location3's YouTube series, Digital Shop Talk, where he discusses the latest trends and digital news. And we also have Nick Niels with us, and he is the head of local search at Location3. And his role is to execute enterprise-level strategies with local market activation for Fortune 500 brands throughout North America. He also partners with brands that range from 50 to over 15,000 locations on services, which include local listing management and local SEO. And so with that, I'm very happy to turn it over to Joshua to get us started.
Great. Thank you, Salma. Fantastic intro. Really appreciate everyone joining us today. I think we've got a lot of great content to go over. Also just want to thank the American Marketing Association and ReadyTalk as well for allowing us to present today. So just a little bit about what we're going to run through today as it relates to scaling digital marketing for multi-location brands. We'll tell you just a little bit about Location3, dive into some industry trends, and then really talk about what we think is an effective way to really balance what we call national and local, hyper-local strategies. And then last but not least, before some Q&A, we'll get into a market prioritization model to kind of help you strategize accordingly. So without further ado, Location3, just off the top, we're a digital marketing agency, and the way we talk about ourselves is that we're an agency that delivers enterprise-level strategy with local market activation. We're coming to you from snowy Denver, Colorado this afternoon. But we've been around since 1999 and really have been right at the heart of the local search marketing game since that beginning. So we work with a lot of multi-location brands, and hopefully can translate some of that knowledge to you today. This next slide is really a fancy way of saying that we're really a full-service integrated digital agency. So everything from data and analytics all the way through connecting with customers online and offline, is really what we do here at Location3. So starting right into the content today, I think to kind of frame it up, what we wanted to do is really highlight a few key industry trends, particularly as they relate to multi-location businesses. So I think off the top, this is a research study recently conducted by HubSpot. Probably not a huge surprise for a lot of folks on this webinar today when it comes to brand and companies' top marketing challenges. The number one being generating traffic and leads. So really generating customers. And what we're going to talk a lot about today, especially for multi-location brands, often refers to foot traffic, people coming in the door of your business or business locations to purchase a product or service. One key thing we want to note that many of you have also probably seen is that 2017 is really the year where digital officially takes over in terms of percentage of marketing spend. This has been trending this way for a while. Obviously, traditional media like television, radio, out-of-home, still a lot of dollars go there. What we see a lot is where brands and organizations miss the boat in connecting some of those offline pieces. to customer conversion. So 2017 is the year digital has taken over, and we only expect to see that grow. I think one stat that what a lot of people don't think about when it comes to traditional media, particularly TV, is that a lot of this advertising time is not always being paid attention to. I think all of us are guilty of this, whether we're watching sports or our favorite program on TV. We often have a phone or tablet in our hand at the same time, whether we're multitasking, ignoring that television spot altogether, or getting annoyed by TV and switching to a different station. And as I said, a big part of this is the growth of mobile. We all know mobile is continuing to accelerate at a dramatic rate. And that changes the way how we market to customers as time goes on. I think one of the things that we don't think about when it comes to mobile is just how attached individuals are to their devices. So we thought this was a funny piece from Think Google that 68% of people say they check their phone within 15 minutes of waking up in the morning. I know I'm guilty of this. And another piece that folks are now really tethered to their devices. So much so that 30% are willing to admit they get anxious when they don't have them, like Mary Catherine, who says she essentially feels naked if she doesn't have her phone with her. So the growth of mobile is huge. How do we connect with those customers and hopefully convert them accordingly? So what does this mean for multi-location businesses? What we're going to talk about a little bit today is around this growth of really hyper-local searches. And one of the ways that this has been really quantified as of late is really interest in these quote-unquote near-me searches. As you can see, it's increased 34x since 2011 and nearly doubled since then. And essentially 4 in 5 of these local searches are conducted obviously directly on search engines. So when it comes to a business, the key thing to remember here is that these types of searches typically are what we call high purchase intent searches. And as you can see, 50% of consumers will visit a store within 1 day of conducting a local search on their smartphone. So whether that's a brand search or a non-branded search, these are individuals who are looking for something relatively immediate in nature, whether that's a product or service. So nearly 1 in 5 ultimately lead to a purchase within a day. So really a lot of incremental dollars on the table if you can connect with those consumers and convert accordingly. One thing to note here is that a lot of these near-me searches are often brand agnostic, one thing that we want to point out today. So it's not to say that brand strategy doesn't have a very important place, because it obviously does. What we want to talk a lot about when it comes to the balancing really national and local strategies is certainly where does the brand marketing piece fit in, but more importantly, how are we capturing those consumers that are doing a lot of research, checking multiple sources of information before they decide where and how to spend those dollars. Those folks, those brand agnostic folks, really represent that incremental lift in revenue for your business if you can capture them. The key, actually I got ahead of myself here, so just to kind of drive this home, when you think of a purchase decision, this is a nice piece from Think Google that shows that the multiple touch points an individual can make before they actually make a purchase. So whether they start from a social display perspective and are really just becoming aware of your brand or business location, they often conduct multiple searches, consult multiple pieces of information before they decide when and where to go. So really the key is how are we connecting with them along each of those touch points and hopefully moving them a little bit further down the funnel to visiting one of our locations to make a purchase. Which is a fancy way of saying how do we stand out, particularly with these folks who are not conducting high-level brand searches. How do we get their attention? How do we bring them to one of our business locations? So what we really talk about here at Location3 in a lot of ways is really twofold. It's balancing, as I said earlier, that brand strategy with what amounts to customer acquisition at a very local level at one of your business locations. So really finding that sweet spot in between the two is where you can be most effective and see the biggest return on investment. Obviously, technology has a big role in this, but we very much feel that it requires hands-on management, and we'll talk a little bit about that when we speak to some of the specific channels themselves. We are search marketers at Location3, so we'd be remiss not to kind of bring up some of these key stats. I think sometimes people get Google fatigue, for lack of a better way to put it, but it's worth noting that Google is still the lion's share of the search market. It's not to say that your strategy shouldn't be executed consistently across multiple channels and multiple search engines, but Google still is the biggest player on the block, and that is not going to change anytime soon. When you look at the stat on the right, they pretty much own the entire mobile market. So when we think about those mobile consumers, Google is the biggest player, so we need to focus there. So when we talk about national and local, this is a simple search for kind of one of those brand agnostic terms here in our own backyard, restaurant near me. I think whether you live in a particular city, you're traveling on business, or for pleasure, these are the type of searches that are being conducted when someone simply wants to grab lunch or dinner or something like that. So these are the brand agnostic customers we're talking about, and you can see what that landscape looks like. This is just a snapshot of page 1 in Google's results, because at this point, nobody is searching on page 2. I think we all know that. So page 1 is where you need to essentially grab that real estate across multiple digital channels to have the best chance to connect with those consumers and ultimately convert them. So this is kind of the space we're playing, and you can see how those national and local results filter in for just a simple search like restaurant near me. So in order to reach customers, really what we always talk about is starting with the data. What is the existing data that you have at your fingertips? What is that data telling you about how they're converting, which channels are bringing in the most traffic online, where maybe some gaps exist both in your marketing in terms of channels and some of your owned assets like your website, your business listings, things of that nature. How can we optimize that data, and how can we use that information to execute key tactics across multiple channels to ultimately connect with more customers and convert them? Key piece here. One thing that we see, what we often see are two, as we call it, common approaches to really managing the balance of this national and local strategy. And that is a centralized system versus a decentralized system. So a centralized system is where everything is kind of managed from the top down. You have the brand team and the corporate team really executing those brand strategies and providing individual business locations, tools, technology, content, channels, what have you, to really execute and connect with customers in their backyard. The other side of the coin is the decentralized strategy. We kind of refer to that as the wild, wild west. Let's say if you're a franchise system, for example, maybe you're doing some branded paid search, you're running TV buys, you're doing display media from the corporate office and the corporate marketing team, but you're allowing individual franchisees to go out in their markets and partner with the local agency or purchase a piece of software to execute on social media tactics. This is where the threads start to come apart, because there's a lot of things from messaging, from wasted budget, essentially, that can go wrong. So we very much believe in taking the approach of a centralized system. And there's a number of reasons why. It really allows you to establish clear business goals and objectives, which are paramount, regardless of how you're spending your marketing dollars. A big thing that we see where clients or partners of ours have taken the decentralized approach is a lack of consistency in brand messaging. It really goes all over the place. And that ultimately results in wasted marketing dollars, which I don't think anybody is in favor of. So another key piece really from a centralized approach is being able to look at all of that data, which there certainly are tremendous amounts of, and making sure that we're viewing that information in an apples-to-apples perspective. Because when it comes to analyzing all of these different channels and marketing initiatives, we need to ensure that that information is consistent across the board so we can optimize and improve performance accordingly. And then obviously when you're doing things from a consistent perspective, you can take particular learnings from one channel like Google or Facebook, one particular region that may be high performing or low performing for that matter, tactics, strategies, et cetera, and really apply those across the board a little bit more successfully than if you were in that kind of decentralized environment. And obviously, last but not least, centralized systems simply allow more opportunity to kind of consolidate whether you're working with multiple agencies or using multiple pieces of technology. It's a way to kind of rein a lot of that stuff in a little bit more, and again, get back to that apples to apples comparison of performance. Because at the end of the day, there are a lot of channels, there are a lot of tactics, there's a lot of ways that we can go about this. Consistency beginning at the top, as we said, is incredibly key. So let's break that down a little bit. What we're going to talk a little bit about here is what, in our opinion, we feel is the most effective way to scale things at a national level, and then distill that down to individual business locations to speak about how we can ultimately drive more customers in the door. So business listings. To us, this is low-hanging fruit. If you have a large brick-and-mortar footprint, this was table stakes 5 years ago. If you are not doing this as a multi-location business at this point, you're already a little bit behind. So this is, as we said, this is the low-hanging fruit. The reason that we feel that these must be managed on a national basis at a corporate level gets back to that piece of consistency. And I think Nick can speak to this a little bit more later on. But essentially, search engines like Google are assessing ranking authority and position for your business locations based on system-wide accuracy and consistency of key business information and where that's distributed. So everything from the brand name, the address, phone number, website URL, and some of those other key data points. The more consistent that is across every single business location in all of the directories and sources of information where that business info lives, that's ultimately going to contribute to better rankings because Google sees that as the best possible choice for the user, depending on their location and their obvious search term. From a national perspective, it's also much easier and a much better approach to be able to manage that data in bulk, whether that's major updates or changes. Again, getting back to that theme of consistency. Moving down the list, it provides you the ability to, again, consistently establish core keywords based on your products and services, because Google business listings, other business listings, you only have a small bucket of really key terms that you can apply to these business locations. So it's important, again, to have these level set across the board. And again, from a reporting perspective, that apples to apples performance insights, being able to see that in aggregate to understand what markets are performing, what business locations need to get some lift, is a key piece, that you have available when managing that at a national level. So as we said, I probably said consistent 5 times, but it can't be overstated. Consistency is key. From an SEO perspective, there's a number of things that you can do both at a national and a hyper-local level from an SEO perspective. First and foremost, however, obviously, it goes without saying that everything tied to your brand's root domain and your branded website should certainly be managed by the corporate team and the brand marketing team. Anything that is built off that root domain, whether those are business pages, be it on subdirectories or subdomains, still should be in-house. What we've seen in some cases with partners where business locations go out and buy vanity URLs, if you will. So rather than DunkinDonuts.com, for example, maybe it's DenverDunkinDonuts.com. What that ultimately does is take away from the ranking authority of the brand's website. And the ability to rank on that individual vanity URL compared to other major companies, major brands is incredibly difficult. And again, it really fractures that brand message, that brand consistency, and that user experience, which is ultimately what we're trying to focus on in order to convert those customers. So anything related to the website, in a nutshell, should certainly be owned at that brand level and managed accordingly. If you do have business location pages, regardless of how they're set up, we always recommend that from an administrative perspective, there's someone on that brand team or one of your partner teams that's managing that information, because while there are things that we recommend that can be customized and developed at a local level that really speak to that local audience and that local user, there needs to be some stakes placed in the ground around the content that is used, the keywords that are focused on, the overall structure of the website and those pages that are built off of that website. That need to be managed from the top down. Paid media. So, when we think about kind of the owned earned assets is really the best place to start, business listings and your core website assets being the most important, because organic traffic is obviously the best return on investment. However, paid media certainly can provide some instant lift, whether it's general brand awareness, whether it's special promotions, seasonal campaigns or initiatives. Paid media can have an instant bang for the buck if done properly. From a PPC perspective, one of the biggest misses we see that really often occurs more in those decentralized systems is around bidding on branded terms. So again, using that franchise example, what we've often found is, let's stick with the Dunkin' Donuts example. If Dunkin' Donuts is buying the term Dunkin' Donuts on a national basis, and its franchisees are working with separate partners or doing it on their own as savvy franchisees, they may be bidding on that same Dunkin' Donuts brand term. All that does is waste precious marketing dollars, whether it's at the national level or maybe one of the smaller budgets at an individual localized level. It seems like a no-brainer, but this is a common mistake we find all the time when it comes to PPC for multi-location businesses, is just wasted dollars with individual locations competing with actual branded accounts. So a quick win today, this might be worth checking with your Google AdWords account or with your team to see if this is actually occurring. And you'll save some dollars right now. Anything that's associated with those branded campaigns, whether that's particular landing pages, anything around retargeting and conversion optimization, again, this should really be managed at the corporate level to have a clear understanding of performance from an apples-to-apples basis. What calls to action are performing well on consistent landing pages? Are there regional differences? Are there different products and services that maybe one region or a small group of locations offers that others don't? These are things that all need to be standardized, and this is why we recommend it, again, from a national perspective. One other key piece is really territory compliance. This is where the brand marketing team, when you have a brick-and-mortar footprint, I know this is a little bit more prevalent with franchise systems, but there are obviously territory marketing so that individual locations aren't competing with each other. It's most effective to set those from the top so that they're consistent system-wide and your business owners, your franchisees know kind of the parameters of their geographic targeting when it comes to PPC. From a display media perspective, we view display media oftentimes as more so top of funnel, not always, but a little bit more predominantly. So this would be more of an awareness play, and this is where we recommend, again, the brand marketing team owning this piece. Again, consistency in messaging, consistency in creative, calls to action, et cetera. And then paid social, we would probably bucket similarly to PPC, knowing some of the things that you can do on paid Facebook to drive folks to even business locations. Again, really just around those kind of brand terms. I think at the local level, non-brand, as we'll discuss here in a moment, is where the opportunity lies. So that's high level from a national perspective. From a hyper-local perspective, we want to jump into kind of the SEO. We touched a little bit about a little on business location pages. As we said earlier, business listings are the low-hanging fruit. They're the best way to really grab a good chunk of that page one real estate if done effectively. However, the space has grown much more competitive and will only continue to be more competitive to really grab those first couple of positions to appear on Google Maps. The next kind of phase in that organic search approach from a hyper-local level is really around having business location pages. This is not the same as having simply a store locator on your main website. These are essentially individual landing pages with customized content by location. As we mentioned earlier, some of that stuff still needs to be managed at the national level in terms of brand consistency, brand messaging, administrative rights as far as what images can be used, what company videos can be used, any of those content assets. That should still be standardized at the brand level. But if done correctly on the back end of your CMS, whether you use WordPress or other versions, we recommend setting these pages up from a subdirectory basis. We won't get into the weeds of the subdirectory ranking authority. It's more important to understand from a content management perspective that when set up properly and structured properly, you can give your business locations admin access on the back end on a location-by-location basis to then customize things like offers for their local business that maybe one has and one doesn't. Things such as community associations and links to those communities that they're active in, as well as other kind of localized content. So this is another way to really grab some more of that page one real estate, because when structured properly and built out with localized content, search engines like Google are going to give those pages authority because, again, they see those pages as providing the most relevant and useful information to that user conducting those local searches. And so it's a great way to, again, supplement your business listings approach with additional opportunities to grab that local market real estate. From a paid media perspective, what we talked about at a national level is where really those branded campaigns should live. When we look at these hyper-local paid search campaigns that are focused on individual business locations, this is really around non-branded terms. So when we talked earlier about those near-me searches, this is a great way for business locations to grab some of that brand-agnostic incremental traffic and hopefully customers. To use, let's say, I know I have an oil change near me, but maybe even one we can probably relate to is the coffee near me. I myself, I keep using Dunkin' Donuts because I love Dunkin' Donuts coffee. But I am the type of individual that if I want a cup of coffee, I'm happy to go to a Starbucks or to a Pete's Coffee as well. I'm not necessarily going to walk 10 to 15 blocks just for that cup of Dunkin' Donuts. So bidding on those kind of non-branded long-tail phrases where essentially consumers are showing interest. They're raising their hand looking for something. Even if they know your brand, they may not necessarily have such a strong brand affinity that they won't go somewhere else. But if they know you're nearby and you're capturing them on these brand agnostic terms, you can still convert them. So key pieces here from an ad copy perspective, again, it's all about that user experience. So very customized ad copy. This is where you can really mine your search query report and look at existing search terms to identify some opportunities of keywords and phrases to go after that maybe you aren't currently bidding on, but users are conducting. Again, localized calls to action. We can't overstate the importance of call tracking. Ads that have call tracking, the conversion rates are so much higher. I don't have the stat in front of me than those without, but it's back to the mentality of these folks are looking likely to make a purchase or a store visit. And so the easier that you can make that process for them with simple things like call tracking and localized CTAs, the better chance you are going to have to ultimately hopefully have them pass through the doors of your business. Same for paid social. The key here is non-branded terms and to focus on non-branded terms. Because again, if someone really loves your brand and is searching for your brand, they're probably going to try to find you. It's all about grabbing those incremental, brand agnostic, localized folks. And then last but not least, from a social media perspective, this is where we think local businesses and individual locations can have one of the biggest impacts. We always recommend that any kind of social engagement, especially with customers, be done at the very least at the brand level. If you have the ability to scale it with certain tools, technology, or just admin access from a brand level, the more you can allow local business owners to engage with their local consumers, it creates so much more authenticity in that customer experience. Having an outside partner or vendor manage engagement with customers ultimately loses that authenticity and becomes a lot harder to get your arms around. So this is where individual business locations, whether it's reading and responding to reviews, posting and sharing local content, promoting local offers or events, this is where you can really empower business locations, obviously, to have that connection with consumers. It is important, particularly on Facebook, to ensure that you have parent-child Facebook integration set up. We see Facebook growing more and more in terms of users searching for business locations in the same way they would look on Google My Business. So while we've talked a lot about Google, it's important to ensure that structure is in place. So having that brand Facebook page set up with the ability to have that child page integration that shows your business locations, the ability to link to those individual business Facebook pages. That structural stuff is key from the top. Once you have that in place, it's up to you to really decide how much access you want to allow business locations and owners to really engage with those customers on a one-to-one basis. So hopefully, at the end of the day, a national and local strategy balanced out looks a little bit like this. As Google often refers to these kind of terms like restaurant near me, these are moments of intent, types of purchases. So how do we balance it across the board when we think about moving consumers from awareness all the way through to purchase and maybe even brand advocacy because they had such a great experience at one of your locations? So we talked a lot about kind of some of the key tactics and channels. Every brand is going to be a little bit different. I think one of the biggest takeaways here is all about, as I said earlier, consistency. Consistency in brand messaging, ensuring that the performance that you're seeing is on an apples-to-apples basis so you can optimize accordingly. And then providing marketing dollars, channels, and key tactics to those business locations that are really around those high-intent purchases so that they can find the business location at the end of the day and hopefully visit you to make a purchase. So there's a lot there. I think one of the biggest things that we find that brands and partners have often struggled with is, okay, I get what I need to manage at the national level. I understand kind of how I want to manage this at the local level. Where do I start? I have one market that does really well. I have a bunch of markets that aren't performing so well, but I'm not sure how to provide the greatest amount of lift. So that's why we have developed our market prioritization model to kind of help brands key in and use some existing data that's already available to them to decide where to start. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our head of local search, Mr. Nick Niels, to walk through the model.
Great, thanks, Josh. A lot of excellent information there. And as Josh mentioned, at the end of the day, it is challenging and difficult to prioritize markets and focus in and understand the ones that need the most attention because you may be dealing with 50, 100, 5,000 plus locations. That's just a lot to kind of wrap your head around. So I'm going to get a bit tactical here. I'm going to open up and start to talk about how we prioritize our markets and the model that we built and the success that we've had with it. And really, the days of the set it and forget it, the one-size-fits-all approach is dead. So no longer, Earthlink business, no longer can you absolutely dominate the search results and be almost the only brand that shows up. This approach no longer works for a variety of reasons. One, the competition has heated up, as Josh had already mentioned. The local search engine real estate is getting tighter, and there are no signs of it slowing down. Both the big brands and the mom and pop shops continue to increase their investment in digital marketing. And according to a recent eMarketer study, that digital ad spend is expected to increase 12% over the next year and projected to increase steadily over the next 3 as it's reaching $23 billion. And that's in addition to the large digital budgets already in place. Another study by GetResponse actually projects that 70% of small and medium-sized businesses will increase their digital budgets in 2017, with 30% of them increasing these budgets considerably. This increased competition means multi-unit franchise brands need to become more focused and more tactical at the local level to win. The problem is I continue to see many Fortune 500 brands losing in almost all areas of local search. They deploy the same tactics across all locations or sometimes no tactics, and they're falling into this set it and forget it loop. Set it and forget it worked for Ron Popeil, and it did work for digital marketers back in the day, but it no longer works in today's local search environment. Brands need to dig deeper, and in my experience, these brands may be monitoring overall campaign results for their 50, 500, 1,000 locations, but they're not focused on the local search performance. And as a result, they are unable to react to underperforming or overperforming locations, and Ron's not happy about this. This location may be overperformed for too long, or maybe that would be underperformed, but the concept here is that these brands aren't aware of location level performance and therefore cannot react and take the appropriate steps. And regardless if with these Fortune 500 brands, the scenario that's playing out today is that they continue to invest in, let's say, Super Bowl ads, right? $5.5 million for Super Bowl ad this year, yet they have extremely poor non-brand visibility, which shows me is that they're making massive investments in marketing, both online and offline, yet for terms like coffee or breakfast all day or fast food near me, there is no local search visibility. They don't have a grasp of their local search performance, and they're definitely missing the mark, which is a huge opportunity for them. You also have brands that sponsor a college bowl game, yet they provide a very poor user experience. So in this example, if you click through from the local listing to the website, you actually go to the home page. You're losing people in that conversion funnel because now this consumer has to go and do a store locator search and try to find that local store page again to learn the more information that they're looking for because you've sent them to the home page. Rather, you should be sending that traffic directly to the local store page that's set up. So spending a lot of money on a college bowl game, missing the mark again in local search. You have other brands that contract highly paid celebrity spokespeople, yet have very poor store page speed. They have location pages, which is great in this example, this Aspen Grove location, but the problem is they're missing the mark when it comes to local store page load speed. And this is very important because, as Josh already mentioned, the majority of queries now are becoming more mobile focused, and the majority of traffic is becoming mobile focused. And so it's not good when you have these local assets, yet they're performing very poorly. We've also seen that this increased investment for the multi-unit and franchise systems has actually led to an increase in complaints being sent from franchisees to the corporate marketing team. So these are franchisees or store owners who contribute to the marketing fund, this digital marketing fund, and they're wondering where their ad is on Google, why they aren't showing up on the first page of search results, or how can they overall just get more leads from this digital investment. And those are really the calm requests that come in to corporate from the field. The problem is that these squeaky wheels tend to take up a considerable amount of time from the corporate marketing manager, the corporate team, and also potentially a lot of money from corporate. The problem is that our research and our models show that the squeaky wheels rarely deserve the grease. And to win in local search today, we believe that multi-unit franchise brands not only need to focus on location-level results, but need to benchmark and invest in the locations that will return the highest projected ROI, not always reactively servicing the squeaky wheel, rather proactively coming up with a plan. So when it comes down to prioritizing these hundreds or thousands of locations and considering them, it can feel overwhelming, and it's easy to fall back on assumptions. Things like the biggest market deserves the most budget and most attention overall. Even with access to location-level sales data, let's say, the picture still is not complete, and the marketer is left being reactive and trying to move forward without a cohesive data-driven plan. And it gets to the point where it seems reasonable to have a monkey blindfold a monkey and have him throw darts at a dartboard to determine which locations to focus on, right? Whichever one it lands on is the one that is going to get your focus. But I think there's a better way, and you actually may have heard of a similar study done by Princeton University where they replicated a process of having 100 blindfolded monkeys throw darts at a stock page, right? Sometimes people say you're better off just throwing darts at a dartboard to figure out where to invest, and that's what Princeton University did, and they built a monkey investment portfolio. They put this portfolio up head-to-head against an expert-selected portfolio, and the result was that 98% of the monkey investment portfolios beat the stock universe. So if you're already using this monkey dartboard process, there's a chance it's working for you. But I do believe there's a better method. And I believe there's a method that's a lot more safe. This picture alone just strikes fear in me if we had a bunch of monkeys helping us prioritize locations, it seems a little dangerous. So really what I'm trying to say is don't rely on a blindfolded monkey and don't be a blindfolded monkey. If you're tired of servicing the squeaky wheel and looking for a proactive method to prioritize markets based on projected ROI, which we were, then I'll show you a better way and why it's worked for us. And I call it the tiered market prioritization model. Sounds exciting, right? Actually, I think I've got a better slide. There it is. That's much better. The tiered market prioritization model. Maybe the name needs some work, but this slide is solid. And what we do is we start by pulling in top ROI indicators for each location, beginning with the current sales performance. So this includes kind of a health check of new stores that are opening, stores that will be closing in the future. This is kind of a stability assessment because we don't want to invest our time and effort and potentially funds in markets that are going to close in the future or that have just opened. Maybe they have their own plan going on right now. But it's important to be aware of those. We also pull in sales data based on either current performance, pacing, or projections to get a sense of how all locations are performing. So in these slides, I basically pull out about 6 locations, but you would literally do this for all of your locations, hundreds or thousands of locations. You would start compiling this information. Because at the end of the day, we're going to compare all these locations head to head. And to compare all of them can be a bit overwhelming, so you can set up a tiering system. And what this does is basically buckets the sales data into a high priority market, a middle of the pack market, or low priority. So in this instance, high priority means sales are pacing below goals or pacing below projections. They get a score of 1, it's red. High priority, these potentially deserve some attention, some additional attention and funding. You've got middle of the pack performers that are average. They're kind of in the middle third of performing locations. And then you've got the low priority, meaning they're outpacing their objectives and goals, and they're pretty solid at this point. And then you can start pulling in current campaign performance. So this is current local search performance for local listing management, search engine optimization, and pay-per-click. So the same concept applies here where you're going to want to tier out these locations based on performance, so you can get a sense of, is this a market that potentially deserves some of this additional attention or not? At that point, we pull in a very powerful piece into our model, which is population density. What this allows us to do is to get a sense of the population around every single location. So for a gym, for example, knowing how dense the population is around that location compared to its peer set, compared to all other locations within that brand portfolio, can be beneficial because you can leverage that data later in the model to help prioritize locations using the most densely populated areas, for instance. And you can get this data from the Bureau of the Census, or there's other third parties that you can leverage as well to access this information. At that point, we want to get a sense of the competition, and there's 3 ways to basically pull together this competitive saturation metric that we're looking for in these tiers. One is to leverage the existing real estate team that you potentially already have within your brand. And so let's say Starbucks wants to open up new locations. They've got this real estate team that does extensive research based on foot traffic, driving traffic. Is that area expanding or contracting? What is the population, competition, things of that nature? And so they may have access to competitive saturation data already, and they may have already gone through this process. So being in contact with the real estate team, they may have some valuable information that you can leverage in this model to get a sense of competitive saturation around every single location. You can also estimate it. So if you have only 20 locations, you can go into your competitor store locators or do some manual searches and figure out what locations are surrounded by your main competitors most densely, meaning there are many big box competitors around you, or those that actually don't have too many direct competitors near them. And that will help you tier this out at the end of the day as well. And if you have hundreds or thousands of locations, you're probably going to need to scale it. So this is actually a screenshot of what we built. It's a tool that compares the latitude and longitude of one location across thousands of other locations and comes up ultimately with the miles apart. How far away are these two locations? Some of these don't necessarily matter, right? 1,600 miles apart, they're not in direct competition, right? They're states away. But any location that's maybe within 5 or 10 miles is a direct competitor because you're competing for the same consumers in that area. And so by building a model, you're able to kind of boil that down and get a sense of which locations have a lot of competitors within a radius and which ones don't. And at the end of the day, what we do is we tier that as well, right? We want to boil that down so we get an easy scale to be able to determine what locations are competitively dense, they have a lot of big box competitors around them, and which ones actually don't. And this is all, again, compared to the peer set, compared to all other brands in that or all other locations in that portfolio. So now we're feeling good. We've got all of our data gathered. We can actually generate a final priority score, and we can even tier that as well. So you can get a sense of store number 100 at the top. That kind of ends up being middle of the pack, right? It's performing average. But if you look at the bottom example, store number 105, while sales are middle of the pack, they're not doing well with local listing management or search engine optimization. They've got a lot of competition. So at the end of the day, maybe that's a location that you should consider focusing. It could have a potential positive ROI waiting for you if you can move the needle a bit there. So you're feeling good. You're feeling like you've got this roadmap, right? You've started to build a roadmap and identify which locations to focus on. When all of a sudden a disruptor comes along, and I like to call that the trump card, right? I didn't coin that term, but things kind of seem normal, and someone comes along and changes the plan a bit and stirs things up. And what I mean by that is a CMO or CEO can come in and say, hey, I know you've got this model, but you have to focus on these 5 locations. And that's kind of tough to hear, and there will be disruptions like that. But at the end of the day, you have the data to have a very educated and thorough conversation with that particular person, CEO, CMO, and say, hey, I understand you want to focus on these locations. Can you tell me more? Or at the same time, you can also educate them on the process you went through and the data that you have leveraged to determine the highest priority locations and those that deserve additional attention. Another way that we're able and commonly prioritize locations is based on a location that is poor performing in local search, yet it has a very high population. What this means is if I can move the needle on the performance of that location when it comes to local search, I may have a lot of eyeballs that will potentially see that and a lot of potential consumers that it can get out of it because it's so densely populated. The thing to remember here is sometimes these high population areas also have high competition. So it might take a lot of investment to move the needle just a little bit, but the return could be massive because there is so much population there and so many searches occurring around that location. Conversely, what we've also done in the past is we've looked into locations that are poor performing and actually have a lower population or middle of the pack population. And the reason that we do this is because at times the competition in this area is going to be very low. So it may not take much investment to move the needle, but at the same time you may not have a lot of conversions or eyeballs that are going to see that incremental lift and see that data. Now, these locations tend to be in smaller markets, and so a small increase of 100 more conversions over the course of a couple months may be plenty for this location because it's already in a small market. And the example I use here is from Otter Tail, Minnesota, which I can confirm that's a very small town because that's where I grew up. I can also confirm there's a giant otter statue there. That's myself and my family. So if you're ever in Otter Tail, go get your picture at the otter statue. The last way that we've prioritized is based on edge cases. So ranked right on the edge, so maybe rank number 2, you want to go to 1, ranked in position 4 for local listings. If you can get in that 3-pack, that's going to give you increased visibility. Or page 2, for instance, you want to move on to page 1. So you're on the fringe, but you want to kind of get up to the next level. And what we've seen by running this model and executing at the hyperlocal level all of our optimizations is over the course of 3 months, we saw a 10% lift in Google page 1 visibility, as well as over a 500% lift in Bing page 1 visibility, focusing on priority locations, right, those that may have the highest ROI. And then also for local listings, same concept over the course of a couple months, 13% lift in Google, and then 1,200% lift in Bing for top 10 visibility for local listings. So very successful identifying the locations. You also end up with an increased personal ROI because you're now investing in locations that need the most attention. You've got increased corporate ROI because you're improving the outlier performance that can lift overall campaign performance. And then you have that roadmap for all locations that you can leverage throughout the course of the quarter or the year. So really what I want to encourage everyone to do is build a model. It doesn't have to be fancy. Hack it together. Start that dialogue with your clients or your brand. Educate them on the data you've leveraged. And then put in that work at the hyper-local level because we've definitely seen it pay off.
Great. So that wraps the webinar today. A lot of information there. I know we're recording this. I think we can open up to the floor for some questions.
All right, fantastic. Yeah, we have a little bit of time. So we'll start off with the first question, and it's coming from Sanin, and he wants to know, at the beginning of the presentation, the content goes product-centric. So what about customer-centric or hybrid or PCCC? So he has a bit of a lengthy example, but if you can kind of give us more information about a customer-centric approach.
If I'm understanding correctly, I think to me, from a search perspective, customer-centric, we touched a little bit about some of those longer tail terms. What we see from those non-branded long tail terms and phrases is that a lot of those are research-based queries. So I mentioned a little bit earlier too about kind of mining your search terms report to see what users are looking for. A lot of those times, and especially with the rise in voice search that we're seeing, are those keys and keywords and phrases are very question-based. Folks are looking for an answer. They're not necessarily looking instantly for a product. They're looking kind of more from an umbrella perspective. So where I guess an example would be kind of that restaurant near me versus maybe someone specifically looking for a place to get a cheeseburger, right? So I think at the end of the day, on the other side of the coin, it's the more you can tie kind of some of those queries and build those campaigns out and segment them accordingly from a paid media perspective. It allows you to really customize that ad copy that speaks directly to kind of those longer tail terms and essentially answers those questions that users are inputting within the ad copy. You can even apply some of the messaging and copy, to the organic side of things. So if you see a lot of trending information around key terms and key questions, build content for that on your local business pages. At the end of the day, it's all about trying to answer customer questions, because the better you can do that and the sooner you can qualify them from page 1 down through that funnel, the better off you're going to be at hopefully converting them.
All right, wonderful. And I have both of your contact information available in case he wants some further follow-up on his question, or to any of our audience members. So next question is coming from Kat, and she wants to know, so Facebook parent-child, the thing is FB parent-child hierarchy does not display the content in follower news feeds unless directly posted on the child's pages. Do you have any suggestions on how to navigate around this? At scale, publishing on a hyper-local level is difficult when managing 100+ locations.
Yeah, it's a great question. And Facebook is continuing to invest significantly in local search, so this definitely can change over time. I know they continue to receive feedback from multi-unit brands and agencies alike on how things can be improved. Right now, there's a couple different ways you can process this. One is there's third parties, right, that can allow you to post to individual pages, kind of help you scale that. There's even some that will allow you to customize it and geo-modify it at the local level. It depends on what type of content you're pushing. If you want to push the same brand content across all locations, that's fairly easy to do. But when you start getting into what I believe is more effective is that hyper-local content, that's where leveraging franchisee or store owner involvement can definitely be beneficial, because they know the local associations they're involved with, the local events that they're working on and partnering with. And so that's where that content really, whether you allow them to send it to you and then you as corporate are able to submit it out, or if you provide them access, they can actually submit it out themselves. And so it's definitely a challenge brands are facing today, and that's kind of the route that we're seeing people go with that.
All right, wonderful. Well, we have time for just one more, and this is coming from Sherry. And she wants to know, does this refer to a daily spend? And to be more specific, she is inquiring about SMB's plan to increase digital marketing budgets.
I believe that references the study from GetResponse. I believe that's yearly budget, and that's just digital overall. So it's not necessarily pay-per-click. But that study did show that SMBs, 70% will continue to increase their digital marketing spend, and then 30% plan to increase it significantly. So just capturing the overall investment that SMBs are making. And again, that highlights the increased competition that continues to grow and will continue to grow and trend over time. Basically leads to it makes it much harder to win in local search. So that's really where you have to kind of sharpen your tools and continue to invest your time, because you can see those significant returns.
All right, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for that clarification. That is all the time that we have for today. Joshua and Nick, thank you so much again for this great information, for taking some time to share all of these insights with us. As a reminder to our AMA members, you can view an archive of this webcast at any time by visiting ama.org/webcast. I also want to thank ReadyTalk for their partnership, as well as for providing us with the web conferencing platform for today's webcast. And last but not least, thank you so much to our audience. Thank you for your time and your participation, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.